So hello again everybody and welcome to this channel. My name is Rainer and this is Rainier Books. This is my trilogy about the long list of the National Book Award that I'm interested in. Long list of the National Book Award for translated fiction you already saw, liked and commented hopefully, and subscribed to my channel. Now comes the National Book Award long list for nonfiction. You know that I'm a very political human being. I think everything is politics in our lives. This is also why I'm interested in the genre of non-fiction. It can be everything between a memoir, a research study, a popular science book where science is explained very easily, and about events. Non-crime could be non-fiction, whatever. The genre is very, very huge and wide. So here's the long list of the National Book Award and the books that I might be interested in. I will always give a comment to all the books that I see here, and I read from the publisher's descriptions of the book. So the first one is Omar Akkad, One Day Everyone Will Have Always Been Against This, published by Knopf / Penguin Random House. This book is in the Stockholm City Library. On October 25, 2023, after just 3 weeks of the bombardment in Gaza, Omar Akkad put out a tweet, and he wrote, "One day when it's safe, when there's no personal downside to calling a thing what it is, when it's too late to hold anyone accountable, everyone will always have been against this." This tweet has been viewed more than 10 million times. As an immigrant who came to the West, Akkad believed that it promised freedom, a place of justice for all. But in the past 20 years, reporting on the war on terror, Ferguson, climate change, Black Lives Matter movement, and more, and watching the unmitigated slaughter in Gaza, Akkad has come to the conclusion that much of what the West promises is a lie. That there will always be entire groups of human beings it has never intended to treat as fully human. Not just Arabs or Muslims or immigrants, but whoever falls outside the boundaries of privilege. One Day Everyone Will Have Always Been Against This is a chronicle of that painful realization, a moral grappling with what it means as a citizen of the United States, as a father, to carve out some sense of possibility in a time of change. This is Akkad's non-fiction debut. He is a writer of fiction. He has also won, for example, the Scotiabank Giller Prize 2 years ago, I think. This is his most raw and vulnerable work to date, a heartsick breakup letter with the West. It is a brilliant articulation of the same breakup we are watching all over the United States, in family rooms, on college campuses, on city streets. The consequences of this rupture are just beginning. This book is for all the people who want something better than what the West has served up. This is the book for our time. Oh yes, I believe in that book. I gotta read it. This is super, super interesting. I'm in. Caleb Gayle, Black Moses, A Saga of Ambition and the Fight for a Black State, published by Riverhead Books / Penguin Random House. Penguin Random House is always here, aren't they? In this paradigm-shattering work of American history, Caleb Gayle recounts the extraordinary tale of Edward McCabe, a black man who championed the audacious idea to create a state within the Union government, a black man who championed the audacious idea to create a state within the Union government by and for black people, and the racism, politics, and greed that thwarted him. As the sweeping changes and brief glimpses of hope brought by the Civil War and Reconstruction began to wither, anger at the opportunities available to newly freed black people were on the rise. As a result, both blacks and whites searched for new places to settle. That was when Edward McCabe, a black businessman and a rising political star in the American West, set in motion his plans to found a state within the Union for black people to live in and govern. His chosen site, Oklahoma, a place that the U.S. government had deeded to indigenous people in the 1830s when it forced thousands of them to leave their homes under Indian removal, which became known as the Trail of Tears. McCabe lobbied politicians in Washington, D.C., Kansas, and elsewhere as he exhorted black people to move to Oklahoma to achieve their dreams of self-determination and land ownership. His rising profile as a leader and spokesman for black people, as well as his willingness to confront white politicians, led him to become known as Black Moses. And like his biblical counterpart, McCabe nearly made it to the promised land, but was ultimately foiled by politics, business interests, and the growing ambitions of white settlers who also wanted the land. In Black Moses, Gayle brings to vivid life the world of Edward McCabe, the black people who believed in his dream of a black state, the white politicians who didn't, and the larger challenges of confronting the racism and exclusion that bedeviled black people's attempts to carve a place in America for themselves. Gayle draws from extraordinary research and reporting to reveal an America that almost was. Wow. This seems more on the research, historical science kind of side, this book, because it's based on a lot of research and writing about the history of the United States, but it also seems very, very important in a time when we have an administration in Washington, D.C., a president in Washington, D.C., who wants to get rid of all these parts of the history of America, who wants to whiten the history of the United States, and wants to get out everything of slavery, racism, and genocide on the indigenous people. Very important book. I don't think that I will be able to get it, because it seems to be very American, specific American, and might be difficult to get it here over in Europe unless you buy it. And I, as you might know if you watch the channel very often, I don't want to buy that many books anymore. I'm out of it, of consumerism. Next one is Motherland, A Feminist History of Modern Russia, From Revolution to Autocracy by Julia Ioffe. Julia Ioffe is a great expert of Russia. Published by Ecco, HarperCollins Publishers. In 1990, 7-year-old Julia Ioffe, that's her, and her family fled the Soviet Union. She's 42 years old now. Nearly 20 years later, Ioffe returned to Moscow only to discover just how much Russian society had changed while she had been living in America. The Soviet women she had known growing up, doctors, engineers, scientists, seemed to have been replaced by women desperate to marry rich and become stay-at-home moms. How had Russia gone from portraying itself as the vanguard of world feminism to becoming a bastion of conservative Christian values? In Motherland, Ioffe turns modern Russian history on its head, telling it exclusively through the stories of its women. From her own physician great-grandmothers to Lenin's lover, a feminist revolutionary, from the hundreds of thousands of Soviet girls who fought in World War II, to the millions of single mothers who rebuilt and repopulated a devastated country, from the members of Pussy Riot to Yulia Navalnaya, the wife of opposition leader Alexei Navalny, Ioffe chronicles one of the most audacious social experiments in history and documents how it failed the very women it was meant to liberate, and how that failure paved the way for the revanche of Vladimir Putin. Part memoir, part journalistic exploration, part history, Motherland paints a portrait of modern Russia through the women who shaped it. With deep emotion, Ioffe reveals what it means to live through the cataclysms of revolution, war, idealism, and heartbreak, and how the story of Russia today is inextricably tied to the sacrifices of its women. My God, these books are so interesting. The third one that I really, really would love to read, if I had the time. For the Sun After Long Nights, the story of Iran's women-led uprising. I think this one is super interesting too. Already the title catches me. By Fatemeh, Jamalpour, and Nilo Tabrizy. Published by Pantheon Books, which is, of course, an imprint of Penguin Random House. In September 2022, a young Kurdish woman, Masajina Amini, died after being beaten by police officers who arrested her for not adhering to the Islamic Republic's dress code. I remember that very well. Her death galvanized thousands of Iranians, mostly women, who took to the streets in one of the country's largest uprising in decades, the Woman, Life, Freedom movement. Despite the threat of imprisonment or death for her work as a journalist covering political unrest, state repression, and grassroots activism in Iran, which has led to multiple interrogation sessions and arrests, Fatemeh Jamalpour joined the throngs of people fighting to topple Iran's religious extremist regime. And across the globe, Nilo Tabrizy, who emigrated from Iran with her family as a child, covered the protests and state violence, knowing that spotlighting the women on the front lines and the systemic injustices of the Iranian government meant she would not be able to safely return to Iran in the future. Though they had met only once in person, Nilo and Fatemeh corresponded constantly, often through encrypted platforms to protect Fatemeh. As the protests continued to unfold, the sense of sisterhood they shared led them to embark on an effort to document the spirit and legacy of the movement and the history, geopolitics, and influences that led to this point. At once deeply personal and assiduously reported, For the Sun After Long Nights offers two perspectives on what it means to cover the stories that are closest to one's heart, both in the forefront and from afar. What a great list this is. Things in Nature merely grow, by Yiyun Li and published by Farrar, Straus and Giroux / Macmillan Publishers. There's no good way to say this, Yiyun Li writes at the beginning of this book. There's no good way to state these facts, with much must be acknowledged. My husband and I had 2 children and lost them both. Vincent in 2017 at 16, James in 2024 at 19. Both choose suicide and both died not far from home. There's no good way to say this because words fall short. It takes only an instant for death to become fact, a single point in a timeline. Living now on this single point, Lee turns to thinking and reasoning and searching for words that might hold a place for James. Lee does what she can, doing things that work, including not just writing about gardening, reading Camus and Wittgenstein, learning the piano, and living thinkingly alongside death. This is a book for James, but it is not a book about grieving or mourning. As Lee writes, the verb that does not die is to be. Vincent was and is and will always be Vincent. James was and is and will always be James. We were and are and will always be their parents. There is no now and then, now and later, only now and now and now and now. Things in Nature merely grow is a testament to Lee's indomitable spirit. Honestly, this description already makes me cry. And honestly, I think I wouldn't be able to read this book. It sounds so sad and so, it's an indomitable spirit, and I guess that it's the word that never dies is to be, but it's more than I could fathom right now. I'm sorry. And I have the greatest admiration for an author like Yiyun Li to write about this, but it's really too heavy for me to be able to read this. The Autobiography of H. Lan Thao Lam by Lana Lin, which published by Dorothy, a publishing project. Sounds very interesting. The publisher. In her 1933, The Autobiography of Alice B. Toklas, Gertrude Stein invented a new literary form by narrating her own story from the perspective of her partner, blurring the lines between portrait and self-portrait. Almost a century later, experimental filmmaker and artist Lana Lin has resurrected Stein's project to tell a different story of queer love, life, and artistic collaboration. A candid chronicle of her partner Lan Thao's life journey from Vietnam during the war and her own troubled history as a genderqueer Taiwanese American, Lin draws in subjects as varied as photography, cancer, tropical fruit, 9/11, and Eve Sedgwick's eyeglasses, weaving an intimate landscape of living that is also a critical investigation of race and gender. Is interesting, definitely a book. All the books, and even Yiyun Li's book, of course, don't get me wrong here, all these books are super, super interesting, but I stick with the first 4 ones until now here. Next one is Ben Ratliff. Well, the book is called Run the Song, Writing About Running About Listening, Writing About Running About Listening, by Ben Ratliff, published by Graywolf Press. Out the front door, across the street, down the hill, and into Van Cortlandt Park in the Bronx. This is how Ben Ratliff's run started, most days of the week for about a decade. Sometimes listening to music, not always. Then at the beginning of the pandemic, we all remember 2020, he began taking notes about what he listened to. He wondered if a body in motion, his body, was helping him to listen better to the motion in music. He runs through the woods, along the Hudson River, and into the lowlands of the Bronx. He encounters newly erected fences to an intended FEMA field hospital and demonstrations against racial violence. His runs and the notes that result from them vary in length, just as the songs he listens to do. 70s soul, jazz, hardcore punk, string quartets, Ilian, Radiques, slow change electronics, Carnatic singing, DJ sets, piano music of all kinds, Sade, Fred Astaire, and Ice Spice. But the song is also the story, Run the Song is also the story of how a professional critic, frustrated with conventional modes of criticism, finds his way back to a deeper relationship with music. When stumped or preoccupied by a piece of music, Ratliff starts to think that perhaps running can tell him more about what he's listening to. Let's run it, he'll say. And with that, the reader in turn is invited to listen, alongside one of the great listeners of our day, in this wildly inventive and consistently thought-provoking chronicle of a profoundly unsettling time. I am not a runner. I am much too overweight to run right now. But I could be interested in looking at the book. But I'm afraid that here in Europe, here in Sweden, where we get a lot of books, and I can't praise the Stockholm City Library more than I do, and I always do here, but I don't think that they will get this one. The next one is a book that is also sad, maybe almost as sad as Yiyun Lee's book, but I definitely would love to read this book. Maybe I have to buy it, because I'm not sure if they get it here. It's Wards of the State, The Long Shadow of American Foster Care by Claudia Rowe, published by Abrams Press. In Wards of the State, award-winning journalist Claudia Rowe's storytelling is both vivid and unflinching, offering readers a deep understanding of the foster care to prison pipeline. Through interviews with psychologists, advocates, judges, and the former foster children themselves, Rowe paints a heartbreaking picture of the lives shapen by a broken system. Rowe brings her extensive experience and investigative prowess to this eye-opening work. With a career spanning over 25 years, Rowe has written for publications such as the New York Times and Mother Jones, and her reporting has influenced policy changes in Washington state. Her previous book, The Spider and the Fly, was a gripping true crime memoir that showcased her ability to blend personal narrative with broader social issues. By the time Marianne was 16 years old, she had been arrested for murder in and out of foster and adoptive homes since age 10. She'd run away, been trafficked and assaulted, and finally pointed a gun at the latest man to take her into his car. She pulled the trigger and fled. But with no family to turn to and few reliable friends, it didn't take long for the police to catch up with her. In court, the defense blamed neither traffickers nor Marianne but Washington state itself, or rather its foster care system, which parents thousands of children every year. The courts didn't listen to that argument, but award-winning journalist Claudia Rowe did. Washington state isn't alone. Each year, hundreds of thousands of children grow up in America's $30 billion foster care system, only to leave and enter its prisons, where a quarter of all inmates are former foster youth. Weaving Marianne's story with those of 5 other foster kids across the country, including an 18-year-old sleeping on the New York City subways, a gangbanger turned graduate student, and a foster child who is now a policy advisor to the White House, Rowe paints a visceral survival narrative showing exactly where and when and how the system channels children into locked cells. This is so important because it's about so much children that we sort of see but don't see, that we don't care about, that we give into a system that is broken not only in the United States but in almost all the countries. There's so much tragedy, so much trauma coming from foster care. Not that I knew anyone who was, but I can imagine how it is. And I really want to know more about it. So very interesting book. When It All Burns, Fighting Fire in a Transformed World by Jordan Thomas, published by Riverhead Books, which is, of course, an imprint of Penguin Random House, I guess, because that's a slash. 18 of California's largest wildfires on record have burned in the past 2 decades. Scientists recently invented the term megafire to describe wildfires that behave in ways that would have been nearly impossible just a generation ago, burning through winter, exploding in the night, and devastating landscapes historically impervious to incendiary destruction. And When It All Burns, wildland firefighter and anthropologist Jordan Thomas recounts a single brutal 6-month fire season with the Los Padres Hotshots, the special forces of America's firefighters. Being a hotshot is among the most difficult jobs on Earth. Thomas viscerally renders his crew's attempts to battle flames that are often too destructive to contain. He uncovers the hidden cultural history of megafires, revealing how humanity's symbolic relationship with wildfire became a war and what can be done to change it back. Thomas weaves ecology and the history of indigenous peoples' oppression, federal forestry, and the growth of the fire industrial complex into a riveting narrative about a new phase in the climate crisis. It's an immersive story of community in the most perilous of circumstances, told with humor, humility, and affection. I'm in. Helen Wybrow, I think this is the last one, The Salt Stones, Seasons of a Shepherd's Life by Milkweed, published by Milkweed Editions. In the heart of Vermont's Green Mountains, Helen Wybrow and her partner set out to restore an old 200-acre farm. Knowing that belonging more than anything requires participation, they begin to intertwine their lives with the land. But soon after releasing a flock of Icelandic sheep onto the worn-out fields, Whybrow realizes that the art of shepherding extends far beyond the flock and fences of Knopf. In prose both vivid and lean, The Salt Stones offers an intimate and profoundly moving story of what it means to care for a flock and truly inhabit a piece of land. The shepherd's life unfolds for Whybrow in the seasons and cycles of farming and family, birthing lambs, fending off coyotes, rescuing lost sheep in a storm, and raising children while witnessing her mother's decline. Exploring the interdependence of animals as well as of the earth and ourselves, Whybrow reflects on the ways sheep connect her to place and to the ancient practice of shepherding. Evocative, affectionate, and illuminating, The Salt Stone sings of a way of life that is at once ancient and entirely contemporary, inspiring us all to seek greater intimacy and a sense of belonging wherever our home place may be. And this concludes the long list of the Nonfiction National Book Award for 2025. And this is such a great long list. I would love to read One Day Everyone Will Have Always Been Against This by Omar Akkad. I would love to read Black Moses, A Saga of Ambition and the Fight for a Black State by Gayle. I would love to read Motherland, A Feminist History of Modern Russia from Revolution to Autocracy by Ioffe. I am very interested in For the Sun After Long Nights, the story of Iran's women-led uprising by Fatemeh, Jamalpour and Nilo, Tabrizy. Can't read Things in Nature Merely Grow by Yiyun because it's too sad, I guess. I would be in, maybe even for Run the Song, writing about running and about listening by Ben Ratliff, if I ever could get this, and I'm very interested in Ward of the State, The Long Shadow of American Foster Care. So these books are really, really a very good inspiration for Nonfiction November, which is, yeah, it's around the corner, not really around the corner, it's still 6 weeks to go, but a super interesting long list. And that completes my reaction to this long list and my introduction for you maybe to this long list, and I hope that you like some of the books. Tell me which ones interest you the most. Subscribe to the channel, like the video, you help me a lot. I see you soon in another video on this amazing channel. Have a good one. Bye bye.